Some of you might recall last autumn I went out to the Eastern Sierra in California in the search of fall color, and for the most part it was a great trip, ultimately a successful trip, but I really didn't find much of that fall color. I was a little too early, and although there are plenty of quaking aspens out there giving off that beautiful yellow, I was just simply a little early. In any case, I wanted to redeem myself this year and I decided to go out to the state of Utah. Now, of course, Utah is mostly known for its desert landscapes, but if you go further north toward Salt Lake City, you are going to get a lot of those beautiful quaking aspens in the Wasatch Mountains, a lot of beautiful fall color. So it was a twofold trip, both to get those landscapes in the desert and then to go up into the mountains and get that fall color. For this great undertaking, I did bring along my tried and true hiking general landscape kit in my Pentax 6.7, as well as a really small Rollei 35 SE. And I did actually recently buy a Chamonix 4.5N1, which is a large format camera, and it's not really one I'm 100% sold on yet, to be honest, but I did bring it along and I put it through its paces as a lightweight large format setup. With all that being said, let's just dive on into the trip. Day one found us making a long drive out from Northern California to Utah through Nevada, and for that stretch we actually took Highway 50, which is considered one of the loneliest, most desolate highways in the country, so obviously a great chance to take a lot of photos. Now when it comes to my film loadout, I did bring some Portra 400 along, as well as some Ektar 100. Between the two, you're going to pretty much cover all your bases when it comes to desert, landscapes, fall color, and I did bring some black and white film stocks along as well. Our first stop on Highway 50 happened to be Fowl, Nevada, and fortunately the light was still quite nice. After a few more hours of driving through Nevada, we did arrive in the old mining town of Austin, and this is a spot I love to stop, stretch my legs, and take a few photos. And while we were doing so, actually the owner of one of the bars in the town came out and started chatting with us. And one thing comes another, and he actually invites us in for some free beers, some Miller High Lifes. So we hop in and do that, and then from there, pretty much just go into this whole impromptu photography session of this old classic Nevada bar, of the owner himself and just the property that he has there, which consists of also just a few old mining shacks, a lot of interesting paraphernalia, so to speak. And overall it was a great time. Had the old Pentax 6.7, had the Chamonix, and just had a whole smattering of portraits I'm fairly happy with. And for the most part, can't say no to a couple free cold beers at 10 in the morning while out on a trip. And this is definitely a spot that I'm really going to want to stop in the future, check in on how he's doing, try some more portraits out, and maybe try some more portraits of the few other people who live in Austin, because it's a really colorful town with a colorful history. Wanting to make up for lost time, we then had to haul ass across Nevada, but we did make one little quick stop in the mining town of Ely. And I've made quite a few photos here before, but this time around I only had time for a couple short, quick compositions. After a few more hours of desolate driving, we did finally reach the Utah border. The light was turning quite nice, but I really just didn't have time to take photos as we had places to be. The place, of course, was Curry Pizza in Bicknell, Utah. Indian food on pizza would be a crime in some countries, but this tasted damn good. Day 2 found us up at the sandy ass crack of dawn in Capitol Reef National Park. If I'm going to make the drive all the way to Utah, there's no way I'm not going to at least go to one national park and catch the sunrise. I will say we lucked out with this awesome cloud cover, and I wanted to maximize that fortune by loading up some punchy Ektar 100. This is a photo that I really like in particular, but part of me wishes I would have exposed it a little longer, but then again, if I exposed it longer, the sunrise colors might have been blown out. One thing that I really just can't get over was all these crazy sandstone formations in Capitol Reef. More than anything, I absolutely love the various textures of these formations when they're hit that directional morning light, and shooting such scenes under midday light wouldn't quite do these sandstone structures any justice. Now, because I did just recently get that Chamonix there, I did actually have to jerry-rig a couple little lens boards here, and although it looks ugly, they are effective. And for the most part, just going into this trip, I will say my overall impressions of the Chamonix is that, of course, it is easy to focus with, it is pretty light, and it is well built. But I will say the fact that it takes a while to set up, and it's just like some little knobs you have to deal with when you are setting it up, that part can be a little bit of a pain. So I'm not 100% sold on this system quite yet, especially when it comes to just having these short bursts of good light in a desert scene like this. Then it's crucial when you're having to really fumble with this camera instead of actually taking photos. On the way back to the car, I ended up finding one of my favorite compositions of the whole trip. Something about the light, color, and simplicity of the photo really just stands out to me, and I'm glad I had Ektar for this photo. With the morning light officially gone, I decided to load up some Portra 400 in my Pentax, and I put some Colorplus 200 in the good old Rollei 35 SE. Our plan was to take a quick hike up to Hickman Arch, which is obviously one of the more famous attractions within the park. This composition of Hickman Arch might be my favorite from the whole hike. If anything, the simplicity of it really speaks out to me, and going forward when I'm photographing landscapes, I really should just remember that. After sweating about 3 gallons on our hike to the arch and back, we did get some much needed refreshments, and then on top of that, I did load up some Tri-X 320, a less common film stock these days, for our hike through the Grand Wash and up to Cassidy Arch. Overall, I had the ultimate goal of actually photographing petroglyphs while in the park, or just in general on this trip, so I was keeping a sharp eye out for those. And luck would have it, I did find some petroglyphs really early on in this hike, kind of tucked away in the corner of this wash where not many people would see it, and it was pretty awesome. These were fairly fresh petroglyphs, I guess you could say, especially given the fact that you do have horses present on the carvings there, so that probably puts it within the last 300 years or so, which can be fairly new in the grand world of petroglyphs. Nonetheless, I'm glad I had black and white film with this. I think this is a good subject matter for black and white film, and not only that, but I did lug along my 135mm Pentax 6.7 macro lens, which sometimes I'll bring along and never use, but I'm glad I brought along for this trip, even if I use it once for these petroglyphs. And although I'm glad with how Tri-X 320 handled the petroglyph scenes, I will say it didn't quite handle the landscapes as well as I'd expected. It is a studio film actually, so it's not going to handle the contrast you'll see in such scenes as well, especially in the sky here when I'm using a black and white filter and accentuates the darkness of the sky. It comes out especially grainy, I've noticed. So going forward, I might try and go in another direction if given the opportunity. Just as I finished up my Tri-X, I did see this group of pronghorn sheep, and of course I had to put in some new film, put in some Portra 400, and by the time I was all loaded up, those sheep were long gone. As we started climbing up out of the wash and towards Cassidy Arch, I did have a mini disaster, and that disaster is that my Pentax 6.7 broke. As I was actually pulling it out of my backpack, the film advance lever caught on the lip of the backpack and just ripped the gear essentially. So for that reason, some of my shots here end up overlapping ever so slightly, but fortunately I did notice this issue the next day and I was able to really avoid it for most of the trip. So it only sporadically happens, but nonetheless, I broke my Pentax 6.7. It's an inevitable thing that happens with this system, and it kind of just sucks to happen out in Utah. With that in mind, there are plenty of good Pentax 6.7 technicians out there, so right after this trip I sent it off, and within a month I had it back fully functional, and at this point it's good to go. It didn't take long for us to reach the arch, and it couldn't have come any sooner because I was overheating like a Subaru STI. The arch itself was absolutely massive, but I was honestly more excited about the wheat beer that was awaiting me in the shade, even if it was piss warm after 5 hours of hiking in the sun. One thing that was cool is that the main gravel road to this arch was closed due to construction, and for that reason there was not many people at Cassidy Arch. It was practically empty for that matter. On my way back through the wash, I came across quite a few decent compositions. Because the evening light was really starting to hit, there were quite a few opportunities out there, and of course I did want to channel my inner Ben Horn, and for that reason I found this composition of an intimate landscape. Even if I wasn't photographing with 8x10 slide film, I am quite glad with how this landscape turned out. We actually ended up missing a lot of the decent evening light as we were at the bottom of the slot canyon, but fortunately I had just enough time to rush to the park exit and find a couple grand landscapes worth capturing. Of course I had to try out the old Chamonix as well. To summarize, I would say it's a pretty successful day in Capitol Reef. I got those petroglyphs, I got a lot of good landscapes, but unfortunately for the drive back, we just had to haul ass to Salt Lake City. Didn't have much time to get much more of Golden Hour, but I can't complain for the day. For day 3, we ended up having the simple goal of doing some hikes in the Wasatch Mountains. Fall color was really popping at this point, and we were hankering to do at least one decent lake hike. This is my first fall hike in the Wasatch, and I gotta say I was absolutely blown away. On the way up the mountain, I did finally bring out the Rollei 35 SE again. For most of this trip, I've really neglected to use the camera, but given the small size and weight of it, I'm not really wasting much by just bringing it along anyways. The lake itself was absolutely gorgeous, and even though it was October, the water itself was just warm enough to swim in. Just as I got dried off, we were treated with a visit from a local amphibious moose. This is the first time I've actually encountered a moose while hiking, so I was quite stoked. With that being said, I was in between rolls of film then, and at the time I had to load up some Ektar 100, and by the time I was ready to shoot again, that moose was long gone. Eventually we did have to leave the lake to check out a few other areas of the Wasatch. Even as we got into the midday light, I did find a few worthwhile compositions on the way back down though. Although it seems that we were a little before the peak bloom, there were undoubtedly some areas that were really popping off. I never really anticipated to see so much red in particular in the Wasatch, but I'm not one to complain. And of course we had to stop for some dairy products in the town of Midway. After milling around for a while, the evening light did start to hit, and of course I sprung into action. Although it's been an Ektar heavy day, I did end up loading some Portra 400 for golden hour. Just as I really was getting into photographing these aspens, my Pentax 6.7 did just start to act up again, so I did lose a few frames or part of a few frames here. These are things that you could crop in, so it's not the end of the world. Didn't completely lose these frames, but it does hurt, I will say. As golden hour really reached its peak, we had the fortune of driving down Big Cottonwood Canyon. Through many of the turns and corners, there's a lot of directional light that aligns almost perfectly with the canyon, so there were some awesome compositions along the way. Once the sun set, we capped off a great day with one of my favorite food establishments in all of Utah. Sorry about that curry pizza. Overall, day 3 was a major success. I did get to see a big old moose. I did get to do some nice hiking, get some fall color, and then of course my Pentax 6.7 is still just barely holding on by a thread. As day 4 rolled around, I expected to have a fairly light day of shooting, but nonetheless a very action-packed day. We did start things off with a hike in Little Cottonwood Canyon, and of course I had some Ektar 100 on hand. After a short hike and a few decent photos, we did reach our end goal and the first beer of the day.
I like Black Regina, but dude, some of their pints, yeah, it's not
And just like that, we were done shooting for the day. From there on out, we mainly just partook in other October-related activities, and that was plenty of fun. Day 5 started off both early and with a sense of regret. It was the final day of the trip and I had many miles yet to cover on I-80 from Utah to California. With that being said, I had plenty of film left and plenty of stops in mind. The first stop, of course, was the Salt Flats, as one would expect. Just down the road from the Salt Flats, of course, is the town of Wendover on the Utah-Nevada border. This is a very rusty, dusty town, and for that reason there's quite a few nice compositions to be had. For starters, the airport there has quite a few abandoned World War II era buildings, and since the sage was in bloom at the time, that offered a nice yellow accent to an otherwise washed out scene. At this point I did switch over to Portra 400 as the scenes were becoming increasingly washed out anyhow. Of course, while in Wendover, I couldn't pass up the chance to photograph this lot of classic cars. This is a popular spot to photograph, but that didn't really stop me from blowing through a whole roll of Portra in 2 minutes flat. While departing Wendover, I did have to pay my regards to Old Will, and from there I was off to the town of Wells, Nevada. As far as towns are concerned, Wells is as isolated, dusty, and rusty as it gets. There are quite a few classic western US scenes here and ample opportunities to blow through Portra 400. Wells does have a few abandoned hotels that on paper should make for great photo subjects. For some reason I just had a hard time doing them any sort of justice with my photographs. But I reckon that's a good reason just to come back and visit some other time. Although I haven't mentioned it in the video yet, I did have the mini goal on the way back of checking out the Ruby Mountains, just kind of along I-80 there, and there's a beautiful canyon called Lamoille Canyon, which is a little just small detour off of I-80 honestly, so if you ever have the time I recommend going there. Unfortunately, when I was driving through, it was actually at peak fall color with the quaking aspens and all that, so this was just a fun place to stop and really an awesome opportunity to photograph what is a generally underrated area. Also, I finally used my Chamonix again. Suffice to say, Lamoille Canyon is a gorgeous place. I really lucked out by hitting it at peak fall color, and I can only imagine that there's some great hikes around here this time of year. One of my favorite photos from the whole trip happens to be this photo that I took with my Chamonix and some Ektar 100. I've never really had the best results shooting large format color negative film, so this was a really satisfying moment for me. After shooting quite a few rolls of film in Lamoille Canyon, it was starting to get late and I had a lot of miles yet to cover, so I did pack away my camera gear and call it a trip. Nonetheless, it was a very successful trip on a both photography, nature, landscape level, as well as just being with my friends, having a good time. So overall, really happy with how things went. I got to see a lot of awesome landscapes, a lot of beautiful fall color, and I got to see a moose. I got to photograph the petroglyphs. So really, there wasn't a single goal that I had for this trip that was not met. So I'm hoping to do something similar again next year, if not Nevada, maybe back to the Eastern Sierra. So I hope you guys stick around for my next trip in the fall and next year.